All right, so you want the inside scoop, huh? You're in the
Yeah.
right place because we cut through the noise and give you only the info you need.
That's right. We're diving deep today
Exactly.
into the Newcastle United versus Manchester United Premier League match.
It's going to be a good one.
Should be a good one.
And we've got this amazing analyst report.
Oh, yeah. This is a good one.
It's got all the numbers, all the predictions, and even some insight into what the betting markets are thinking.
Some good stuff in here.
And what we want to do is figure out who's favored to win this thing
Yeah. Let's get to the bottom of this.
and why these models are so confident.
That's the real question.
Exactly. And then if there's anything in there for our listeners,
For sure.
if they're thinking about placing a wager,
Let's give him the edge.
yeah, all without getting lost in the weeds.
Absolutely.
That's-
So, the thing that jumps out right away is Newcastle.
Okay.
Newcastle is the clear favorite here.
Really?
The report gives them a 66.15% predicted probability of winning.
Wow. Okay.
That's pretty significant,
That's huge. Especially,
especially in football.
yeah. It's not like basketball or something.
Exactly.
So it's got to be more than just one person's opinion.
Oh, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
This is not some gut feeling.
Yeah. What's driving that prediction?
Well, what's really cool here is that it's not even just one prediction.
Oh, yeah.
They're using a bunch of different machine learning models,
I was going to say.
like these super smart algorithms.
Like AI stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Think like XGBoost, Random Forest, bagging all these complex names.
Yeah, I've heard of those.
But basically, they're systems that have learned from tons and tons of football data.
So they're looking at like historical matches.
Exactly. And finding the patterns that usually lead to wins.
Okay.
And the fact that all of these models are independently coming to the same conclusion
Interesting.
about Newcastle winning. That's a really strong signal.
Yeah, so it's like if you had a bunch of experts in a room
Yeah, like a panel of analysts.
and they all agreed.
Right. That's what we're seeing here with these models.
So it's more than just the numbers themselves.
It's the consistency across different approaches.
Okay, I get it. Now,
Oh, and it gets even better. They didn't just stop there.
they went further.
They ran this thing called a Monte Carlo simulation.
Okay, I've heard that term, but
It's pretty wild.
yeah.
Basically, imagine they played this match.
Newcastle versus Man U,
Yeah, 10,000 times in a virtual world,
10,000 times.
using all the data they have. And guess what? In almost 67% of those simulations,
No way.
Newcastle won.
That's crazy. So all those individual models
Yeah.
pointing to a Newcastle win and then this simulation.
Exactly. They all line up.
Okay, so the models are telling us something here.
Definitely.
But let's look under the hood. What's going on with both teams?
Right. What's the story behind those numbers?
How have they been playing recently? What's their form like?
Well, looking at their last 5 matches, Newcastle's got 2 wins, a draw, another win, and then a loss.
Okay, not bad.
But Man U's been a bit more up and down.
Huh?
A loss, a draw, a win, another loss, another draw.
So kind of all over the place?
Yeah, not a lot of consistency there.
Right. So Newcastle's coming in with a bit more momentum, maybe?
You could say that.
And of course, playing at home,
Huge factor.
huge factor in football.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What's the report saying about that?
Well, Newcastle's been super strong at St. James's Park.
They love their home crowd.
Last 5 home games, they've got 3 wins, a draw, and just that 1 loss.
Solid.
But now look at Man U away from Old Trafford.
Uh-oh.
2 losses, 1 win, 1 draw, another loss.
That's rough.
So that's a big difference right there.
Yeah. Newcastle at home, Man U on the road. 2 different stories.
And it's not just about wins and losses, though, right?
Nope. Got to look at the goals.
Goals scored, goals conceded.
Exactly. Paint a clearer picture of how they're really performing.
So what are we seeing there?
Well, Newcastle's been more potent up front.
Yeah.
Averaging 1.8 goals scored per match.
Okay.
Man U's only at 1.2.
Interesting.
But maybe even more telling is the defense.
Okay.
Newcastle's only letting in 1.1 goals per game.
That's tight.
Man U's up at 1.7.
That's a big difference.
And that right there, that defensive strength at home for Newcastle,
That could be key.
I think the models are picking up on that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so team form
Check.
points to Newcastle.
Seems like it.
But what about the players themselves?
Yeah. Who are the game changers?
Who should we be keeping an eye on?
Well, on the Newcastle side, Alexander Isak is the one to watch.
Isak, I've heard of him.
His expected goals are really high.
Expected goals. Remind me what that is again?
Oh, yeah, good point. It's
Mhm.
basically a stat
Okay.
that measures the quality of a shot.
So based on things like angle and distance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even the type of pass that led to the shot.
So it's like how likely that shot should have gone in.
Yeah, and Isak's XG is 0.58 per 90 minutes.
Okay. And what does that mean in plain English?
Basically, it means based on the chances he gets,
Okay.
he should be scoring almost a goal every other game.
Wow, so that's pretty high.
Yeah, and he's actually delivering on that potential.
Yeah.
He's got 5 goals in his last 7 appearances.
Wow, he's on fire.
He is. And then you've got Bruno Guimaraes.
Oh, because expected goals are lower at 0.25 per 90.
Okay.
But he's more of a playmaker.
Setting up goals for others.
Yeah, he's got 3 assists recently.
Oh, he's pulling the strings.
Exactly. Now for Man U.
Okay. Who are their danger men?
Well, Bruno Fernandes is the key guy there.
Always a threat.
4 goals and 2 assists recently.
Wow.
And his expected goals are 0.32 per 90.
So a bit lower than Isak, but still?
Yeah, he's a creative force. And then you've got Rasmus Højlund.
I'm not as familiar with him.
He's been in decent form. 3 goals in his last 6.
Okay.
Expected goals of 0.44 per 90.
So kind of in between Isak and Fernandes.
Right. And the report emphasizes how Newcastle's attack really goes through Isak,
Okay.
while Man U relies heavily on Fernandes to create those chances.
Interesting. Okay, so we've looked at team form.
Yeah.
We've looked at some key players.
Check and check.
Now, what about their head-to-head record?
Yeah. What's happened when these two teams have met recently?
Does history give us any clues? It does. Well, their last 5 meetings have been pretty mixed, actually.
Okay.
Newcastle won 1-2-0.
Pretty convincing.
Yeah, and then there was a goalless draw
Oh, so boring.
and another draw where they both scored 1.
Okay.
Man U got a 3-1 win and a 2-0 win, too.
So if you just look at the last 5.
Newcastle's got a slight edge.
Okay.
1 win and 2 draws.
But the report said something about the overall rivalry being closer.
Yeah. Historically, Man U has more wins overall.
So it's not like Newcastle has always had their number.
Right. So recent history leans a bit towards Newcastle.
Okay.
But it's not the whole story.
Okay, let's go back to those models.
Yeah. Those fancy algorithms.
We know they're pointing to a Newcastle win.
They seem pretty sure about it.
But how good are they at this stuff?
Yeah, how much can we really trust them?
The report gave some accuracy percentages, right?
They did. It's always good to check under the hood.
So what are we looking at?
Okay, so XGBoost has an accuracy of 54.21%.
Right.
Neural network, 54.74%.
Okay.
Bayesian model, 53.68%.
Got it.
Random forest, 56.32%.
Right.
And bagging ensemble, 55.79%.
So they're not perfect,
No, definitely not.
which makes sense.
Predicting football is tough.
There are so many variables.
Yeah. It's not an exact science.
Now, those numbers aren't bad
No, they're actually pretty good.
for football predictions.
Yeah. When you think about all the random stuff that can happen.
Exactly.
And again, it's not just about a single model being super accurate.
It's that they all agree.
Yeah. It's that consistency across different methods.
That gives us more confidence.
Exactly. And don't forget, they didn't just predict the winner.
Oh, right. They gave us probabilities for other outcomes, too.
Yeah. For a draw, they're estimating a 16.78% chance.
Okay.
And for a Man U win, a 17.07% chance.
So way lower than Newcastle.
Way lower.
And that really shows you how much they're leaning towards a Newcastle victory.
Yeah, they're putting their money where their mouth is, so to speak.
Okay, so we get it. The model's like Newcastle.
Big time.
But the report mentions something called confidence intervals, too.
Oh, yeah, good point.
What are those all about?
So a confidence interval basically gives you a range
A range of what?
of how likely an outcome really is.
Okay.
Think of it like this. Imagine we ran all these models a bunch of times.
With slightly different data.
Right. The confidence interval tells us where the actual probability probably lies.
Okay, so for Newcastle, the range is 59.42% to 72.88%.
That's right. Pretty narrow.
So they're pretty confident about that one.
Yeah. For a draw, it's wider. 11.46% to 22.9%.
And for Man U win?
11.72% to 22.42%.
Okay, so those are wider.
Yeah. More uncertainty there.
But the important thing is that even the lowest end of Newcastle's range
59.42%.
is still higher than the highest end of the other ranges.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
So again, all signs point to Newcastle.
And remember that Monte Carlo simulation
66.83% Newcastle win.
falls right within that confidence interval.
So that adds even more weight to the prediction.
Yeah, it all ties together pretty nicely.
Okay, so we got the data side of things.
Check.
Now, what about the real world? What are the bookies saying?
Yeah. What are the odds?
Are they also seeing a Newcastle win?
Well, let's see. The current odds are 1.67 for a Newcastle win,
Okay.
4.20 for a draw,
All right.
and 4.75 for a Man U win.
Interesting. So those odds, we can actually use those to
Yeah,
see
the
what
bookmakers thing.
exactly what probabilities they're assigning.
Yeah. And when you do the math, Those odds translate to about a 59.9% chance of Newcastle winning,
Okay.
23.8% for a draw, and 21.1% for Man U.
So they're leaning towards Newcastle?
Definitely. But it's a bit lower than what the models are saying.
Yeah, the models were up at 66%.
Right, so there's a little bit of a gap there.
What do you think that means?
It's hard to say for sure.
But the bookies are taking other things into account.
Right, they're not just looking at the data.
Things like last-minute injuries.
Yeah, or tactical changes that the models might not have picked up on.
Or even just the mood of the betting public.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the report did mention that Newcastle's odds have been dropping a bit recently.
So maybe the market is starting to align more with the models?
Could be.
Okay, now, the report also talked about this thing called the Kelly criterion.
Ah, yes, the Kelly criterion.
I have no idea what that is.
So basically, it's this formula
Okay.
that tells you how much to bet.
Like a betting strategy.
Yeah, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you figure out if a bet is actually worth it.
Okay, so for this math.
Well, they ran the numbers, and they didn't find a positive expected value bet.
Meaning?
Basically, at the current odds.
Okay.
The risk of a big bet might not be worth the potential reward.
Interesting. So even though all the signs point to a Newcastle win,
Yeah.
you got to be careful about how much you put down.
Exactly.
Okay, so taking all of this into account,
The models, the form the player stats, the betting market.
what's the takeaway? What should our listeners be thinking?
Well, the main takeaway is that the data really favors Newcastle.
Okay.
But the market has already priced that in to a large extent.
So the odds aren't as juicy as they could be.
Right. The value might not be there for a huge bet.
But they did mention some alternative markets.
Yeah, if you're looking for something a bit different.
Like what?
Well, one option is Newcastle to win and under 3.5 goals.
Okay, so you're basically betting on a low-scoring Newcastle win.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then another one is both teams to score. No.
So you're thinking Newcastle's defense will hold up.
Right. And Man U will struggle to find the net.
So those are some things to consider.
Definitely.
Okay, so big picture here. The data's telling us Newcastle's got this.
That's looking good for them.
But the betting market already reflects that.
To some degree.
So you got to be smart about your wagers.
Absolutely.
Now here's something to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
All these models, all these numbers, they paint a pretty clear picture, right?
They do.
But football's a funny game.
Oh, yeah.
Anything can happen.
One moment of brilliance can change everything.
A crazy goal, a bad call by the ref.
Or a manager pulls a rabbit out of the hat.
Yeah, a surprise substitution, a tactical masterclass.
Exactly. The data can tell us a lot.
But it can't predict everything.
The human element is still there.
So even though Newcastle's the favorite,
Yeah.
it's football? Don't rule anything out.
That's why we love it.
Exactly. Thanks for being here.
Anytime. It's been fun.
Until next time.
See you then.